Hi everyone, Max Emmer here from Emmer Law, and I have the privilege today to talk to Nanette Murphy with Live Life Now. She is a divorce coach and actually has a whole title I'm going to let her say for all of you again. But Nanette is a woman who's been through divorce and has a really interesting and thriving practice working with people, predominantly women, but men also, who are navigating and going through the divorce process. And different from an attorney or a divorce financial analyst, she's a coach who can really help people kind of navigate these waters, help consult with any and all issues relating to it, and really help someone feel like they're not alone and isolated during this process so they can find the right lawyer for themselves, so they can have the team around them they need, or just to have a sounding board to ensure they are doing the right things and asking the right questions and getting themselves in the right mental headspace. And I will ask you, Nanette, if I was off base there with my introduction, please correct me. But thank you for joining, and it's a pleasure to talk to you today.
Yes. Hi, Max. Thanks for having me. No, you hit the nail right on the head. My official title is Divorce and Life Reinvention Coach. Because once you go through a divorce, go through that stormy water, you really do want to reinvent yourself. You really do want to create this new person because who you were, she or he is not really the same anymore. And
Absolutely.
I speak from personal experience. Who I
Sure.
am today is nowhere near who I was 10 years
And
ago.
how, so you got divorced about a decade ago?
Yeah, and I always say good news is I don't keep track anymore.
There you go. Well, yeah. And how did you, if I can ask that, how did you come to the point where you started doing this work? Like what was the journey or kind of what was the turning point where your lived experience put you in a position to start doing this work professionally?
Yeah, in a nutshell, it was COVID. You know,
Okay.
we're sitting there all trying to figure out what we're going to do next and
Yeah.
how long we're going to be sitting in this isolation. And so I truly started a journey of classes, certifications,
Yes.
and went from life coaching to divorce or sorry, health coaching, and then wrote a book in 2020 because I had plenty of time on my hands.
Yeah.
Um, and then it was in 2021 that I was approached by someone, a divorce coach, and to be in their realm. And
Mhm.
my first thought was, divorce coach?
Yeah.
There's such a
No,
thing?
it's really I mean the amount of different areas of expertise and professionals is growing, and I think good professionals is something we desperately need. And I think experienced and passionate people to be kind of resources during this really intense time are very important and very beneficial.
Yeah, it's intense, it's challenging, it's emotions on every level. And, I say sometimes you have anxiety, depression, anger, fear, all in 5 minutes
Yeah, no, I mean, or less.
or less.
Or less.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you that. What would a kind of two-parter? One, what would an ideal client look like for you? And two, if someone was watching this, thinking about going through a divorce and hiring someone like you, what should they expect to get out of it? Or what should they expect to work on working with someone like yourself?
So it's kind of a three-part what I
There you
who
go.
I coach. Ideally, I want to help the person who is even just contemplating.
Yeah, 100%.
Or
Getting your ducks in a row, planning
let's
is very important.
Yeah, I always say I am not an advocate for divorce. I
Yeah.
was married 25 years. I
I,
didn't want to get a divorce. It
yeah.
was
No,
literally the only option.
I always say the same thing. I don't encourage or discourage divorce. I give people the information resources to decide for themselves.
Yeah,
And I think that's very important because I think, look, we have businesses and these are our careers, but we are not out here just peddling divorce
oh,
and
no,
telling
no.
people, oh, your husband was a jerk last night or your wife didn't clean the table, divorce them. We understand the gravity of these situations and how much they affect every aspect of your life.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I always say knowledge and preparation are what's most important.
Definitely.
So, to be able to talk to someone in that stage of, gosh, I hope you don't get a divorce.
Yeah.
But if you do, if that's the only answer, then let's prepare properly.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I think knowledge and preparation is super important. I think getting your ducks in a row, as kind of unromantic as that sounds, is very important because this process is just very intense and emotionally draining and painful. And to go into it haphazardly will most likely not best serve your interests.
Well, the outcome won't be what you would hope it would be.
Yeah.
I mean, it never really is, but
No,
it's
it's,
really going to be bad if you're not preparing. But I always say too is if you've been through a divorce, divorce brain, that divorce brain fog is real.
yeah.
The clients that I speak with that, they'll present something to me and then I'll kind of give them a little, well, you know what, if this is what I suggest. And they were like, and it's nothing extravagant, it's nothing earth-shattering, but they'll say, oh wow, I never even thought about it that way. Because you're really not thinking clearly.
Of, of
There's
course,
stuff around you that you can't seem to cut through.
100. You're absolutely right, and I always say too, and I bet you feel similarly. Like, I am really there to be your rational thinker when it's very difficult for you to think rationally. And
Exactly.
when you're dealing with the breakdown of a marriage and your family dynamic, it's of course natural to expect you're not going to be able to be your most critically thinking self. And so I think, and like you too, like we're sounding boards, we're advice givers, we're strategists, we're resources. And
Sometimes a real too.
yes, yeah. But during this process, this is the one time where, it kind of does take a village, I believe. And some people might get that village all in one place. And if you can, great. But I'm a family attorney who believes that there are different disciplines and professionals and resources that can kind of cultivate and help people have a really well-rounded team and dynamic to best position them for the divorcee going forward.
Absolutely. The other thing too, Max, is that when I when I work with my clients, I want them to be ready when they come to you.
Yeah,
Here's what I have, or I'll have help them with a list of questions. Like, here's something to
yeah,
ask your attorney. If I can't answer the question, I'm not going to make it up. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm not an attorney, but I might be able to, I'll be able to
Sure.
do
Or
some really
help them
great.
flesh out what they want. 100%. I think it's
Exactly. You and I talked earlier. I will make sure they have a list of negotiables
yeah.
and non-negotiables. What are you not willing to part with or give up? But what are you going to, it's a negotiation. This is
100%.
this is
Unfortunately,
business
as
dissolving.
it is, and no one, I think people find it very gross or uncouth to think about their romantic relationship and their family and their kids and their house as a negotiation, but it is. And it's
Unfortunately.
really about determining what your priorities are, what you can live with, what is kind of your red line, and getting you to a point where you can move forward. And look, if there's a successful resolution, it usually means both parties are equally dissatisfied. That's kind of the rule of thumb.
Yeah. You have to give up something. You can't have
Yes.
everything.
I always say family law is this or this or this. It's never this and it's never this.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people need to hear that. And one other question I want to have, you've been through this process yourself personally. You work with people. I want to ask you kind of two things. One, what is the biggest lesson or takeaway you had from your divorce, whether you discovered that during or after? And two, professionally, what is your biggest advice to someone out there who might watch this, who's thinking about getting divorced or is about to enter the divorce process?
Okay. The first question.
What did your biggest takeaway lesson
Well,
from your
my
divorce?
biggest takeaway was it came 3 years ago when I discovered that divorce coaching existed.
Yeah.
Because, you know, no offense to attorneys, Max, but
Sure, no, none taken
my
already.
my attorney, um, she was very gracious in helping me through all of my emotions, as she charged me for every
Of
15.
course, and I always say, I'm a very empathic lawyer, but I'm the first to tell my clients, I am not I'm a professional at what I do, but uh, you know, I don't know if your resources are best used on me for certain emotional components. And I'm happy to do it, but I'm also magnanimous enough to admit where my strengths and expertise are.
Right.
And so I think that is a very good point.
Yeah. So, to answer your question, is like, wow, I would say I Googled how to save my marriage. It
Yeah.
didn't occur to me to Google how do I divorce?
I think that's I think that is really not great because of what we're talking about, but I think that is such an important kind of takeaway or slogan, if you will,
Yeah. I said,
because that's assuming it is reparable. And if it isn't, we have to focus on if we can't save our marriage or we're not going to save our marriage or it can't be saved, what can I do? What can we do to best position myself, ourselves, our family to move forward in as healthy and efficient and amicable way as possible?
right, right. So then to your next question, what I suggest to people is my order of appearance on professionals to hire is a coach, is a financial advisor, and then your attorney. So that by the time you get to your attorney, you kind of have a better picture of what is ahead of you. Obviously, the attorney has to put all the legal process together, but I think they're more prepared when they do come and sit in front of you.
So I will say, as a lawyer, most lawyers won't admit it. I think that's fantastic advice,
I've
and I think that's
had
what
a
makes me
few
different.
attorneys agree with me, but
And I
yeah,
think for me, and I think twofold. A lot of lawyers, whether it's they don't want to give up the billable hours or they just the ego or the control factor, they don't want anything outside of their universe. I don't operate that way. I am more than happy to ensure people feel best heard, best positioned, best taken care of if there are other resources that can help in concert with me. And I definitely agree with you. Part of the reason I like working with a team of professionals is it makes my job easier. And, like you said, I'm sure your lawyer was great, but you were paying a high billable hour rate to probably go over things that could have been handled by someone better at it for a lot less money in a different environment. And
exactly. I always say too, Max, is that I'm not asking attorneys to lower their fees. That's not
yeah,
what I'm saying at all.
no,
I'm telling my clients, you know, spend the time with me on those emotional or those
I
things
I
that I
couldn't
can't
agree
quite,
more.
and
You're
then go to your attorney.
100%. And I love certified divorce financial analysts. I love coaches and whether it's co-parenting, whatever it is. And I think if someone takes to heart your advice, not only will they be in a lot more mindful and beneficial position, but they're likely to make their divorce a more efficient process because they've already done a lot of the legwork.
Right, right, right. And because this is not something that I mean, I tell my clients, don't rush through this just
No,
because you want it to be over with.
that is great advice too. No one wants a really protracted divorce, but it is final, except if you
Yes.
and your children, and you don't want to bulldoze through it and then realize I made mistakes. I didn't do certain things. I didn't ask for certain things.
Yeah, and I've talked to some specifically women who they look back and go, "Wow, I made a lot of mistakes." I'm like, I know
And
I did.
unfortunately, and I think a little planning and a little due diligence and a little introspection can go a long way in kind of making a cohesive plan for someone to move through this process.
Yeah, yeah. And I speak from experience. I didn't read a book about this, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I
Well,
did write a book about it, but I
There,
didn't.
yes. Well, Lynette, thank you so much. I love everything you had to say. I will share your website and information if anyone wants to reach out. And I've really enjoyed our conversation. And if anyone leads to or wants to speak with someone who's not a lawyer about their divorce, either prospective divorce or going through it, then that's a wonderful option. And I would highly recommend reaching out.
Thank you very much, Max. It's been a
Thank you
pleasure.
so much for being here.
Yeah.